Good day, everyone. And today is such a great day. It's such a lovely day. We are very grateful to God that we've lived to see yet another beautiful day, because now we have great news for anybody out there that has always been using Rough Animator. Do you know that Rough Animator has recently released a new update? And I know this is like a huge dream come true for those of us that have been waiting for an update for over a year. Like, I've been checking Play Store constantly for over a year, every month. In fact, almost every two weeks or every week, just to see whether a new update has been dropped. And even though my expectations for the new update was not even much, I just wanted them to fix the color preset selection aspect of the Rough Animator app. This new update came with a lot of things that we've been requesting for over the years. Like even those things that I wasn't really expecting. So it's like a huge bonus. But before you go and download the new update, let me share with you the things that you need to know about this new update, the pros and the cons, and maybe the things that are in between that doesn't really matter much to most of you. So starting with the in-between things that doesn't really matter much, we have a general change in aesthetic of Rough Animator. It still has that dark screen mode, but the folder color is now blue instead of yellow. The way your project files are being labeled seems a little bit much more spacious, but aside that, every other thing remains the same. When you open a new project, you notice that everything still seems exactly the same, but in terms of look, it looks much more poppy and everything stands out. Now, there are a couple of differences I would like to emphasize. The first thing you will likely notice are the three dots in front of the layers on the timeline. Clicking them will give you new options that have been added. You now have your blending modes, masked layer below, and lock layers. I'll speak more on this in later parts of the video. Then another thing you will notice is that if you click on this part of add layer, there are some options here that have been taken away. These two options that used to be here were merge layers to layers below and delete layer. Now the new options are in the three dots that are in front of your timeline, which is now over here, merge down and delete layer. The other difference you will notice is that right now, this layer above and fills behind is now in the upper part of this window or of this box. Before, it used to be in the lower part around this area, but now the lower part is occupied with a new option, which is fill by lasso selection. Also more of that at other parts of the video. Now we're going to be getting into the pros of the new update, and we're going to start with the first tool an animator uses, which is the brush. If you happen to have an Android tablet that comes with a stylus with pressure sensitivity, you will now notice that you can draw even more thinner lines than you could in the previous Rough Animator. This is a very useful addition for animators who want to make lineless animations, or animations where they don't want their lines to be so obvious. Complementing the new line thinness that you can achieve with your brush is the bucket tool, which is by far the tool with the greatest upgrade in the new Rough Animator app. It has all its previous features intact, and in addition to that, it fills super thin lines easily, even at tolerance degrees of 100, without spilling out of the boundaries you've set with your lines. Now, to show you how good the bucket tool is, I'm going to make a short tutorial on how to draw ants and fill it with the bucket tool. The first thing you want to do when you are drawing ants is to compartmentalize them into boxes. The ant is a degree of boxes and cylinders. The main palm is more or less like a box, while the fingers consist of 3 cylinders. The thumb consists of like a box, kind of triangle box, and a cylinder. And once you can compartmentalize your ant like this, it will be easy for you to draw ants from any angle. So let's create a new layer for our colors. And on a side note, another advantage of the new update is that labeling your layers is much more responsive. Another advantage of the new update on Rough Animator is that now they've fixed the problem you have with color presets. If you use an Android device, you will experience this sometimes where you will save your colors, and in the process of you doing your animation, you realize that the colors you've saved has already changed. But now it seems as if the color preset actually retains the color preset. Now, I don't know if this is a general problem, or maybe it's a problem unique to Android devices, or maybe just unique to my own device, but this has always been an issue I wanted them to address, and it has been the major reason why I've been eagerly waiting for an update for over a year. I hated the fact that I always had to screenshot the color preset of every character I've designed that I want to use for my animation project, and then during the course of each animation cut and project files, I have to import that screenshot back into the animation file, use the color picker to select it again and apply it instead of just saving it on the color preset. So it has been a huge pain in the ass, but the fact that they've actually done this, in fact, if they had actually just done this only for the new update, I would have been very fine and I would have been very happy. But now it's no longer a problem. Now back to our bucket tool. Another advantage of the Pocket tool is that right now, filling using the Pocket tool has never been more convenient on Rough Animator. Look at this line in the end over here. Look at the gap. Look at how clean that line is. If I apply the Pocket tool with a tolerance of 100 and I use close gap of 1, it fills the end perfectly with no problem. You can see those thin spaces within those lines. Everything is filled perfectly with expand fill of 2. It's not moving out of the lines, and it just feels better. You have to try it yourself to actually know what I'm talking about. Another pro of the new update is that we now have the option to fill with our lasso select. If you click on the bucket tool and click on the layer below, which is fill with lasso selection, you are able to fill by selecting with your lasso tool. Although you don't have to keep your lasso tool, you still have to keep the icon on the bucket tool. Select the color you want, and all the options that you have available to you using the bucket tool is also available using the lasso tool. That is, you can fill behind using the lasso tool, you can fill inside, and you can fill in front. So let's say I want to paint this nail, I'm using fill inside using the lasso tool, and this is better than you using your pen, because in the past, if you wanted to achieve this, you'll have to select your brush tool and then paint it manually. But the lasso tool eliminates the step of having to go over it manually and select the bucket tool again. You can also use the lasso fill to apply blushes and various tones to a particular aspect of your animation. So for instance, if I want to apply blush to the skin of this painting, by enabling the blur fill feature on the options of the buckets tool, I'm able to easily achieve those tones and those blushes that have been applied. So you can use this especially when you're applying blushes to the face of your characters, to the elbows, to the lips, and so on. The next advantage of the new update is that you now have the mask to layer below option, and this feature is very useful when you are making your shadows or applying an highlight to a particular layer of your animation, like say the color layer. So now I'm going to create a shadow layer and I'm going to apply my shadow. In the past, whenever I made my shadow layer, I'm always careful to not draw the lines for my shadow outside the outlines. But now I no longer have that problem, because by enabling the mask to layer below, I can draw the lines outside the outline. Like I can draw the shadow lines outside the main outlines, and by enabling the mask to layer below, the shadow lines only apply to the colors that are below the shadow layer. Another great thing about the new update is that you can have multiple new layers masked to a particular layer. Like in this case, I also want to have a different layer masked to the color layer for my highlight. So once you create a new layer, click on the 3 dots in that new layer and enable that option, and you will be able to also apply a mask for your highlight to the color layer. And you can do this as much as you want. Perhaps the most requested feature of Rough Animator has been introduced with this new update, and that is the blending mode. By clicking the three dots and clicking the first option, you have access to multiple blending modes. You can apply different blending modes to different layers, and you can even apply it to layers that are clipped to other layers. We also now have the ability to lock layers. This is useful when you are done with a particular layer and you don't want to accidentally add or subtract something from that layer. If you enable the lock layer, this will prevent you from accessing any tool when that layer is selected. So it makes sure you don't make any accidents. You can undo the lock by clicking on the padlock icon in front of the layer to unlock it. So another new feature that has been added is for those of you that are using a tablet that has gesture and palm rejection and all this kind of stuff. If you come over here to this option down below in buttons and behavior, clicking on the two finger tab to undo and three finger tab to redo. With this you can, instead of coming over here to click on an undo or redo button, you can just use your two fingers, or you can use your three fingers to bring it back up. So this feature is also a great addition and a new loving thing that you have on your Rough Animator. Another new option you have is to flip your canvas horizontally. Now this feature is very needed, especially when you are drawing a straight face and you want to see whether you got the proportions right. Sometimes you never know what your artwork looks like until you look at it flipped. So let me just quickly draw a face. Once you click on this feature and then you flip horizontal, then you start to see the mistakes that come with your artwork. So this is what this feature is meant for. Although I would have preferred if instead of adding this feature, they added a symmetry feature or a symmetry tool to make it easier. But for now, at least we take over. Additionally, the new Rough Animator update comes with a new feature for those who have tablets that have an attachable keyboard. It's called desktop mode. You can access this feature in your settings menu. As much as I would love to show you how this actually works, I don't have an attachable keyboard. However, you can still enable this feature if you are using a tablet only, and it changes some of the way some items look. For one, it gives you a slider for your timeline to change the size to various degrees. Then you have a magnifying glass icon to increase the size of your canvas, a rotate icon to rotate your canvas, and a palm icon to, I think, move your canvas around. Another subtle feature that has been added that most people may not notice is that now the canvas can snap into position. This also works in full screen mode. Another great change to the new Rough Animator update is that whenever you edit multiple frames, you now have an indicator showing you the amount of time left for whatever process you've applied to the multiple frames to actually get applied. Now that I've spent most of my time talking about the good things about the new update, it's time to actually talk about the not so great things about the new update. The new update now comes with a lot of crashes. Like anytime you are working on a particular project, it tends to crash a lot now. Now I don't know, maybe that's because I'm working with higher resolution, like 4K resolution. But in the previous version of the Rough Animator, I work with 4K resolution and I rarely experience crashes. The worst I get is usually the icon showing me that Rough Animator isn't responding, and that's the worst I get from previous versions of Rough Animator. But with this new version, even when I'm making use of the select tool, sometimes the select tool just stays in one place. It doesn't give me the option to delete, paste, or whatever option that comes with the select tool. So sometimes I experience that, but now it's working very fine. Sometimes even some of my tool brush, I made a glow brush to apply glows to certain parts of my animation, and sometimes that glow brush lags and it leads to a crash. So, but the only time I usually experience crashes with the previous version of Rough Animator is when I'm importing video files into my animation project, especially when I have 3 layers or 4 or 5 layers done and I now want to import a video file. I usually experience a crash. I haven't tried this out with this new update, but I wouldn't be surprised if this actually crashes more when I import video files. Now, this is perfectly expected from new updates like this. When they introduce new features into an application, usually they still have to fix the bugs and address those issues for it to actually be very stable. But for now, the crashes are inevitable. Then the other downside to Rough Animator is the brushes. Like I said, I like the fact that the brush now have this thin outline, but that can actually affect your custom brush if there's a way your custom brush feels. There's a custom brush I made to mimic the brushes on Clip Studio Paint, and right now with this new update, it doesn't work that way. It looks quite different, but that's just a minor inconvenience and something that I can actually live with, and I wouldn't want them to actually go back to the previous way the brushes was actually. So it's, how can I put it, I don't like it in certain aspects, but it's more than makes up for the new aspects that it has. And then another massive downgrade to this new update is that the playback speed for your animation, when you're done with it, maybe you just want to see what it looks like, is now slower. And I said the overall experience of the application is now faster, it is less laggy. But when it comes to you now actually playing back your animation, it is a lot slower. Even when you go into the option, the settings menu to reduce the playback resolution to quarter, it is still slower. Like in the case of this animation I made, Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul, or was it Logan Paul? I don't even know. I was trying to play back the animation to see what it looks like. And at first, I thought the reason why the playback speed was slow was because of the blending modes that I added into some of my new animations. But when I came back to this project, because this is an old project that never saw the light of the day, I haven't used any I've even used any blending modes or anything. It's just the way it was in the previous version. So, and I decided to play it back, and I realized that it was playing very slowly. I even went into the option to lower the resolution of the playback speed. It was still very slow and it couldn't catch up. So that is a downgrade as far as I'm concerned. Now, a new addition I almost forgot to mention is that we now have this option in the option menu of anti-aliasing. So if you want your art or your animation to look much more pixelated, you can switch it off and the animation looks much more pixelated than it actually ought to be. So this is good for people who want to make pixel animations. Now check out how pixelated the brush looks. It's so let's just use a basic brush and just check it out. At 1, you can see this. Now if you switch off the anti-aliasing, it's much more smoother. That's basically what that does. I really don't think I'll have a use for it, although there was a time when I was very much more interested in having my artwork look much more pixelated because I believed it gave it a sharper look. But right now, I don't think I'm too interested in that process anymore. You know what? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it does actually look sharper. So I guess maybe if you want your animation or your art to look sharper, you can disable anti-aliasing and it looks much more pixelated. So that's it for the new update of Rough Animator, and I must say overall this update is a massive improvement. So if you are someone that is very much interested in the new features like blending modes, alpha lock, flip mask, and the likes, then you should go on and get your application updated. But if you're someone that is perfectly comfortable, especially if you're an Android user, I don't know about the iPhone experience or the iPad experience. So if you're using an iPad, maybe you can share it on this comment section. If you know that you're not too concerned about the new features, then don't bother updating it yet. Maybe we should wait a little bit for about a month or two and see if there are going to be bug fixes for Rough Animator. So overall, that's all I have to say about Rough Animator. Thank you if you made it this far. Really appreciate it, and God bless you.